Okay, what's going on, everybody? We're here, we're alive. Hopefully, you all can hear and see me clearly. Before I get into the usual announcements, for those of you who were here at 11:05, I want to apologize. The stream was misscheduled. The stream was supposed to be scheduled for 11:35 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, not 11:05 a.m. And I hate the fact that it now has come across as if I'm a live streamer, content creator who was flagrantly late consistently, in between last stream and this stream, with the exception to my 5 minute grace period. I'm typically not that flagrantly late back to back to back to back. So if you were here at 11:05 a.m., once again, yeah, my apologies for that if it comes across as me being extremely late. But with all that, if you can hear and see me clearly, please drop a one in the live chat. And as I'm waiting for the ones to come in, make sure you hit the like button. That's one of the most important things, if not the most important thing you can do for this channel, because what that does is that it assists in making sure that this video permeates throughout the YouTube algorithm, therefore making sure this video gets out to those who are interested in this type of content and need to see this kind of content. And it also ensures that those who are subscribed to this channel will get the notifications. Secondly, please hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms as well, because it has the same effect within the YouTube algorithm, but also just to let everybody know that I'm currently live. So now with those notifications out of the way, or the introduction out of the way, we can get today's stream started. And as you can see, or as you saw by the title that was on the thumbnail of this stream, it was titled Brandon Johnson and the NAACP Unite to Stop Black Chicago. And that is 100% what is going on in the city. What's happening in Chicago right now, particularly with Black Chicago, is that they're breaking their programming, right? What's happening is that they're breaking programming as far as it pertains to being Black in America. You're just always supposed to vote Democrat, vote blue no matter who, and go along to get along with whatever the program is that the Democrats put forth, regardless of how negatively it may impact your community. But what we're seeing in Chicago right now is something very unique that we haven't seen, at least in my lifetime, where we're seeing the brothers and sisters over there actually leading the charge and making efforts towards stripping Chicago of its sanctuary city status, standing up to Brandon Johnson, really giving him and his administration, as well as his allies on city council, a hard time and making it difficult for them to just run through with the open borders program that bleeds into Chicago in the way that they want to do it. This isn't supposed to be happening. Once again, Black Americans, they're just supposed to go along and get along. As Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, if you don't vote Democrat, you ain't Black. Well, currently, as it stands within the city of Chicago, there are very few Black Chicagoans, because at the moment in time, and hopefully this will continue moving forward, but at the moment in time, there are a lot of former Black people in the city of Chicago with the way things are going and how they're standing up to Brandon Johnson and his administration and bucking against those things that he wants to push forward as it pertains to this man-made migrant crisis by Joe Biden, right? And because he's having so much trouble, he has now summoned the NAACP as well as Black pastors to pacify Black Chicago. This is specifically and uniquely just for Black Chicago, not for the AAPI community that has caused a ruckus in Brighton Park over the migrant crisis, not for those Hispanic citizens in Chicago who are opposed to Chicago being a sanctuary city as well, and definitely not for the Mzungus who reside in Chicago. This is specifically for Black Chicagoans because, like I said, they have broke programming and they are now leading the charge against his administration. So what I want to do is I want to play a few news clips before we get directly into what Brandon Johnson had to say. Now, for some reason, I wasn't able to find this press conference in its entirety. I'm not sure why that is. But what I'm going to do now is play one quick news clip from NBC News Chicago, where we get to hear a little bit of what Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, had to say. And then after that, we're going to follow up with another video clip from NBC Chicago, in which we will hear a little bit of what the Black pastors had to say, as well as additional information coming from the NAACP president, Derek Johnson. So we're going to hear a whole lot of nonsense and shucking and jiving to get Black Chicago on board. So let's get into these clips. There are 182 of you here in the live stream right now. Please hit that like button as we move forward with today's show.
At 4:30, new evidence today that the city is preparing for a tent city on the far south side, even though there's been no official announcement.
The divisions created over how this migrant crisis has been handled brought the NAACP's leader to Chicago today. We've got much more now from our political reporter, Marianne Ahern. Marianne.
Good afternoon to both of you. Yes, with Chicago spending nearly $40 million a month on caring for the migrants, there are just so many questions, including how can the city afford it? And what about those in need who are also looking for social services?
This has been a real challenge for the people of Chicago.
Mayor Brandon Johnson held a private meeting with several faith leaders and the director of the NAACP, Derek Johnson. They presented a united front, even though some Chicago residents and even aldermen have criticized Johnson's response to the migrant crisis.
We must respect the fact that the residents of this city, as it is residents for cities across the countries, they want solutions that's both compassionate, but also solutions that will not neglect the issues that they are confronted with every day in their everyday lives.
The people who live here are.
Before I continue on, we always have to acknowledge the fact, and I'm not going to play the clip right now because I don't want to extend this stream out too long, but we always have to acknowledge the fact that Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, is the same individual whose voice and audio that I played about a week ago, or a week and a half ago, where he was at a press conference or one of those kind of private diners with the, you could say, Black elite class, right, in America. And what he was saying during that dining that he was at is that Black Americans too are immigrants. Black American descendants of slavery are immigrants because they immigrated from the South to the North during the Great Migration. So we always have to keep that at the forefront and remember that when we're speaking on Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP. You, Black American descendants of slavery, are immigrants. This is what the NAACP is pushing, to get you all to have some sort of false and fake camaraderie with those who are crossing the border, many of which who are coming over illegally, to make it seem like we're all in this together and that we're all one, when that is far from the case. Now let's get back into the news clip.
Saying, what have you?
The issues that they are confronted with every day in their everyday lives.
The people who live here are saying, what have you really done special to help us? I have youth, I have families who are in desperate need.
Marcia Eaglin with Impact Family Center sees the heavy equipment has arrived to build a tent city at the vacant lot at 115th and Halsted. Eaglin says the Johnson administration has not answered the community's questions.
We had a meeting and we said what we wanted as a people, as a community, and it does look like some kind of action is happening here. And we just don't understand. I've never gotten word that there was anything that was moving forward on this.
Shout out to Cutthroat Nash. I appreciate you, brother, for always coming through and always showing love. Cutthroat Nash was the first person to contribute to today's stream, who stated, no one listens to the NAACP. We are not 65 and up. You know, I'm hoping, Cutthroat Nash, that is true. I'm hoping that is the case. as we move forward. But honestly, that's yet to be determined. And we're going to really find that out come the elections next year. We're going to see how much so that we as Black folks in America are finally breaking our coding, right? Our programming, and to where we don't just automatically vote blue no matter who. So let's get into this next clip because I don't know what happened with the lighting. Let me see if I can fix that. There we go. So let's get into this next clip now, because in this next clip, we're going to actually get into what the Black pastors had to say, or we're going to get into what one of them had to say, and then we're going to listen to a little bit more of what Derek Johnson of the NAACP had to say, and then after that, we'll get into Brandon Johnson. But let's hear what the Black church has to say in Chicago.
As that we stand with the mayor.
Bishop.
Let me rewind that back.
I'm asking as well as that we stand with the mayor.
Bishop Simon Gordon and fellow pastors flanking Mayor Johnson at the Indiana Avenue Pentecostal Church of God in Bronzeville. The humanitarian crisis bringing more than 20,000 mostly Venezuelan migrants to the city, with the cold weather season upon us presenting a tremendous challenge.
We have to be good citizens and be able to accept and deal with those who come in and be part of the process.
I resent what he's saying there. This has nothing to do with being good citizens. What he wants Black Chicago to do is to continue getting taken advantage of. I despise with a deep passion how weak the Black church is and how weak these pastors are and how they continue on with the legacy of Christianity and the Bible being used as a weapon against the Black community. And mind you, for those of you who don't know, I'm a Christian. As for me, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I know for some of you in the comment section, now that I said that, you flipping out. Oh, that's the Mzungu religion. Yeah. Cool, whatever. That's a conversation for another day. But outside of that, I despise that with such a deep passion, the weaponization of the faith to mislead, misdirect, and just to be honest, flat out harm Black Americans. I hate it with a deep passion. It's so weak and it's so disgusting. But let's carry on. I just had to put that out there. I really can't stand that. I really can't stand that.
The thorny issue of migrant shelters difficult for many, but the national director of the NAACP supporting Johnson and his efforts.
And I look forward to working with this community and other communities as we address the systemic problems of homelessness and migrants who are coming here for refuge. Those two things are hand in hand.
Those two things are not hand in hand. And this is a constant with the NAACP and with political Black leadership and just leadership in general, is the constant conflation of issues that do not go together. Homelessness in Chicago, the racial wealth gap between Black and white Americans in this country, and this man-made Biden crisis, also known as the migrant crisis, these are not the same thing. What Biden has done with these devastating open border policy has nothing to do and is not connected in any way whatsoever with the homeless problem in Chicago that has been neglected for however many decades, just like it's been neglected here in Los Angeles and in New York as well. And it has nothing to do with any other issues surrounding Black America. Those are not the same thing. Now, what I want to do is let's get into the meat of this Q&A session that took place, where we're going to dive into what Brandon Johnson had to say as he was asked a multitude of questions concerning the Biden crisis, and him now bringing in the NAACP, Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, as well as Black pastors as reinforcement to pacify Black Chicago, because once again, they are the ones leading the charge on this. They are the ones leading the charge on stripping Chicago of its sanctuary city status, and everybody else is following behind the lead of Black Chicago. And that just can't happen, because God forbid that then spreads throughout the United States like an illness, right? Like a cancer, touching Black communities from all across the country, from LA to New York now. If that were to happen, the Democratic Party would be finished. And that's what they don't want to happen. So let's get into this clip right now, or this series of clips from Brandon Johnson during this Q&A. And let's take a look at how he just simply danced around every question that he was asked. It was simply amazing to see this. And there are 382 of you all in the live stream right now. If you haven't, please hit the like button. That is extremely important. Thank you. And now let's get into this.
Some specific steps you guys talked about to address the racial divisions that have been, heated because of the migrant influx, and is that knocking on doors? Is that events? Is that, faith events? What kind of specific steps are you going to take to
Mind you, she just asked him, just in case it's a little low, what are the specific steps that you are going to take to mend the relationship that seems to have been severed between Black Americans and migrants? Let's be more specific, between Black Chicagoans and Hispanic Chicago. What are you going to do to mend this? Let's see if he actually answers that question.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that we have to tell the entire truth and the entire story. Because this notion that it's only Black people who are concerned about the migrant crisis is not true. That's right.
Then why did you surround yourself with the NAACP and Black pastors? How come there's no one white on that stage? How come there's no one Hispanic on that stage? How come there's no one from the AAPI community on that stage? There's no one from the LGBTQ on that stage. There are no white liberals on that stage. Why is it only Black folks on that stage? You see, he's already starting out his Q&A session trying to deceive you and lying to you. It's amazing.
So some of the conversation around this division, there are individuals who want to score political points, to sow these negative seeds, to get us fighting one another. But in order for me to have an entire commission dedicated to reparations, as well as an entire office dedicated to reentry, a dedicated revenue stream for the unhoused, that requires Black, brown, and white votes. In fact, the city council has actually demonstrated that even the things that Black folks are concerned about, that it turns out that other members of city council agree. Look,
remember, she asked him about specifics on mending the relationship between Black Chicagoans and the migrants. Translation, Black Chicagoans and Hispanic Chicagoans. He's not answering the question at all.
The whole impetus behind what's happening at the border is for extremism in this country to plant these seeds of negativity to divide our city.
He's blaming the Republicans. You can always count on Brandon Johnson by hook or by crook to blame the Republicans, because Lord knows they are going to put us all back in chains if they get into office.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
That's what's going to happen if they get into office and they take control. Everything is the Republicans' fault. There is no accountability on Brandon Johnson, his administration, and city council.
And so what we are doing as a city is what this city did when they elected me, is that we surround ourselves around our values. We speak to our values by passing paid time off, by abolishing sub-minimum wage, which of course is going to benefit Black and brown people, and that we're going to continue to do what we do best, and that's organize our communities around the values that make the city of Chicago the greatest city in the world.
I want to talk to that really quick, because this goes to the disparities con game that Democrats like to run on black folks in America, right? We all know that the disparities between black and white Americans are enormous on every level, no matter what you're talking about. How do you solve all of these disparities? By closing the racial wealth gap. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, you can't, money isn't the problem. Money isn't the issue. I don't care what anybody says. You close the racial wealth gap. And in closing that, you will see a drastic collapsing of all disparities that exist between black and white Americans. But Democrats never engage in any serious efforts to close the black-white racial wealth gap. What they do is that they engage in the disparities con game, where they tell you that because you are disproportionately affected in one area, what we did was expand paid time off. And by expanding paid time off, that will disproportionately help Black Americans, because apparently, I guess, Black Americans are disproportionately unable to get paid time off. This is the kind of foolishness that they constantly engage in. He also talked about partially raising the minimum wage. What he's speaking to is that in Chicago, and I believe this is the same, or it has been the same, maybe in some cities, it's been changing throughout the country, where those who have jobs, if you're a waiter or a waitress, you're receiving tips. If I'm not mistaken, tip workers, you can say, I'm sorry for lack of better words, they are not able to get minimum wage. How employers have been able to finagle paying those who receive tips less is that legally they were able to pay you under minimum wage, because they said you're making so much money off of tips, and the money that you make off of tips will offset the difference between what we're giving you and your minimum wage, right? So you're actually making more money regardless by us not giving you minimum wage. Well, in Chicago, that's been changed. So now if you're a waiter, you're a waitress, maybe you park cars in a parking lot, you will no longer receive beneath minimum wage, but you will now be eligible for minimum wage. And once again, this is somehow, some way going to disproportionately benefit Black Americans, because we're disproportionately affected by this situation. This is the same con game that they've been running for the last 60 plus years. Rising tide lift all ships policies, Black and brown people of color, minority and marginalized groups, all in one, up in one boat together. This hasn't worked yet. It hasn't worked yet. Hence, the disparities are still as exaggerated as they are. But let's get into what he had to say next now.
Mayor, you're here with a number of Black pastors, and one of the issues that we've seen happen or not happen is Black churches stepping up to take in some of these migrants. Did your discussions today include any discussions about Black churches stepping up, and are you asking pastors to do that part in this situation?
The beauty of this moment is that I don't have to ask people who are tethered to a faith that's bigger than a government to step up and do right by people. There are Black leaders that are stepping up and leaning in and supporting migrants in this moment. There are Black pastors who are stepping up and making sure that the dollars that are appropriated for violence prevention, that the council is prepared to vote for that. The whole work around reentry, Reverend Marshall Hatch has an entire village on the west side of Chicago called the Ma Alpha Project that is dedicated to making sure that individuals who are formerly incarcerated get another chance at economic security.
But about the migrants, have you had any discussions about
what I'm saying is that Black leaders in this city have always stood up for what is right. They're doing what they have always done, which is leaning in and supporting not just this crisis, but every single crisis that this city has had to endure. What we don't ever have to debate is where the Black church stands when it comes to justice.
They stand with selling out Black America, unfortunately.
And this situation is no different. I've answered your question.
I haven't heard you answer the question.
Which part of my question are you not understanding?
I got to give whoever that reporter is a round of applause for keeping Brandon Johnson on his toes and keeping him honest. You're not answering my questions. And this is how the entire Q&A session went about, where he's not answering any questions. He keeps dancing around everything. And the reporters here at this Q&A actually held his feet to the fire concerning Brandon Johnson not answering any questions. Now, before we continue on playing that, there are 509 of you in the live stream right now. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button. That is the most important thing that you can do for me on this channel. Trust me when I say I'm not saying that just to be saying it. It truly is the most important thing that you can do. And I want to just make sure to give my thank yous. Thank you very much to Think Out Loud. Think Out Loud said he's following a script like most Black leaders. He is 100% following a script. All gas, no brakes. Thank you very much. Stated, let's not forget that the churches got a big bag from the mayor for their so-called summer youth camp. We all know that young people don't go to church, so that money was never spent. Quid pro quo. I 100% agree with you. All gas, no brakes. I'm right there with you. Thank you very much to Darlene here we go with those names again that I can't read. Crumity, I guess, for the super sticker. Thank you very much, Darlene. I deeply appreciate it. And shout out to Cutthroat Nash doubling down. He said, the F is this N talking about? I don't know what he's talking about. I don't think any of us knows what Brandon Johnson is actually talking about. And I don't think he specifically knows what he's talking about. All he knows, as who was that? As Think Out Loud said, is to follow the script. And that's all he does, is follow the script. Now let's get back into what Brandon Johnson had to say as he was being challenged by the reporter for not having his question answered.
They're doing what they've always done, which is leaning in and supporting not just this crisis, but every single crisis that this city has had to endure. What we don't ever have to debate is where the Black church stands when it comes to justice. And this situation is no different. I've answered your question. I haven't heard you answer the question. Which part of my question are you not understanding? What part of my answer that you're not understanding? What I'm saying is that they've already done it, is what I'm saying. They're already done it. You don't understand that they've already done it? Can we move on? Because apparently, I've said it repeatedly, let me just, I'm clear, that Black pastors have already stepped up in this moment. Of course, we're having conversations about how the federal government and the state government has to do more. But I wanted to be emphatically clear, because if you're not hearing it, I want you to hear it clear. Black pastors are stepping up as they always have stepped up.
I do have a different question, but I am going to back off my colleague in saying, I think he's just asking how many churches have taken in families.
I like that. I can appreciate how they are not letting up on Brandon Johnson, and look at how frustrated he's getting. And watch his response at the very end, and it's coming up very soon. But look at how frustrated he is with the fact that these folks aren't just following the script along with him as far as the media is concerned. This is a liberal city. You know, this is the city of Chicago, a vote blue no matter whose city. You in the press, you should all know better too. Why are you guys holding my feet to the fire the way that you are? He's extremely frustrated right now. But I'll tell you this much for sure. As long as he stays on script and doesn't go out of bounds and like Eric Adams did in New York, he's going to be just fine. He's going to be just fine. He's doing what he's supposed to do at this moment in time, which is manage Black Chicagoans. All Black politicians and mainstream Black political leaders like Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, as I've stated numerous times, their role is not to lead Black Americans at all. It's not to engage in moving forward with the embetterment and the empowerment of Black Americans in America. It is simply to manage the Black community. That's it. To simply manage us and to keep us mindlessly voting blue no matter who, like we've been doing for the past 60 years without resistance that has resulted in absolutely no fundamental change within the Black community. If there was real change, you wouldn't have these crazy disparities to the degree that we have them. The only thing that has changed are numerous cosmetic changes. You can go urinate in the same toilet as a white man now. You can interracially date and interracially marry. You can go into whatever establishment you'd like to. But when it comes to that which matters the most, the racial wealth gap, when it comes to that, because that equates to power, when it comes to that, no. There's been no change. And it's actually getting worse because Black Americans are projected to have a median net worth of 0 by 2053. If we honestly, arguably aren't already there. But let's continue on because this is almost over.
Church is taking families. That's it.
Sure. Well, sir.
I'm so, let me rewind that back. There's something I want to go back to this female reporter backing up her colleague. And I want you to pay attention to what Brandon Johnson just did, because as they're pressuring him to answer this question concerning Black pastors, what you're going to see, or at least hear, because you won't see him, but you're going to hear one of the Black pastors, he wants to step in and say something. But Brandon Johnson's just going to go, okay, sure. Just, basically shut up and know your place. You're not here to talk. You're just here to back me up. I got this. Just help me in managing these Black folks, vote blue no matter who, and help me manage them getting back in line and getting them off my back. But I don't need you to speak up here. Watch this. Watch this.
Are stepping up as they always have stepped up.
I do have a different question, but I am going to back off my colleague in saying I think he's just asking how many churches have taken in families. Our church is taking families. That's it.
Sure. Well, a number of.
It was like, you can hear the pastor say, I would love to. I would love to. Meaning, I would pass me the rock. Let me hold it. I got this. I got this, Brandon. Let me answer that question for you. Sure. Shut up, Ninja. You just up here to look good and back me up. I don't need you to speak. I know what the script is. Just shut up, bro. That's Brandon Johnson for you.
Them have stepped up, and we're going to continue to push for more of them to step up.
Would you ever consider turning the buses around? When the buses arrive here saying, you know what, there's no more room at the end. We do no longer have the capacity to take anyone else. Maybe it's time to turn the buses around.
Will you ever consider turning the buses around and saying we are at capacity, we cannot take anyone else? Let's see if he actually answers that question.
Push for more of them to step up.
Would you ever consider turning the buses around? When the buses arrive here saying, you know what, there's no more room at the end. We do no longer have the capacity to take anyone else. Maybe it's time to turn the buses around.
Look, do we need better immigration policy in this country? Everybody recognizes that. And I've said this repeatedly, that foreign policy and national policy has not done its due diligence to meet this particular crisis, but the crisis that existed well beyond this moment.
That was not an answer to the question. She asked him a very specific question. Will you start turning the buses around because there is no more room? And he started talking about foreign policy and immigration reform, but what he didn't do was give a yes or no answer. And I made it a point to cut that answer short, because I'm going to play the rest of that in its entirety on another stream, because he bleeds into another topic that I want to discuss that I don't want to jump the gun and get into right now. But what I want you to see is, as the clip that we're watching of Brandon Johnson has cut forward from what we were just last listening to, right? This was the last, I want to say, 15 seconds of the Q&A session. And watch how he just abruptly walks off. Just abruptly. He leaves the Black pastors on stage. He leaves the president of the NAACP, Derek Johnson, on stage. He just leaves in frustration and irritation, because once again, I'm not here to really lead Black Americans anywhere, let alone the city of Chicago. I'm just here doing my job, taking my script that the DNC has handed me. I'm not here to really listen to what you all have to say. Watch how he just walks off on everybody.
We have to make sure that our policies reflect true equity and that they're consistent. So thank you all very much.
115 Olmsted and 38. They're still.
He just left. Let's watch that one more time in closing. He left Derek Johnson on stage. He left the Black pastors on stage. He just left everybody behind and said, yeah, whatever, peace.
In this moment, we have to make sure that our policies reflect true equity and that they're consistent. So thank you all very much.
You would not turn buses around there? 115th and Halsted and 38th, they're still.
Once again, that's Brandon Johnson for you. That's Brandon Johnson for you. In closing, if I'm not mistaken, I do want to say this. I believe that today in Chicago City Council, they're supposed to be revisiting the referendum to add on next year's ballot in Chicago whether or not the citizens of Chicago want the city to remain a sanctuary city. I believe today they're supposed to take a vote on that. It has been successfully blocked on 2 occasions by Brandon Johnson and his allies in city council. I do believe that today is the day that they're supposed to take a vote on that in city council to see if that will be added to the ballot next year. But I honestly, in my opinion, I think that the reason that he had the NAACP as well as Black pastors all come together to surround him in order to pacify the city is because I have a notion that it's not going to pass. I don't think it's going to pass. I think prior to this moment, there was a lot of momentum and steam behind it passing. But with the way that they were able to block the vote twice now, and with so much time that has gone past, it's been a little bit over a week now, if not exactly. No, it's been over a week now. It's been over a week now. Maybe 8 days now since they last convened over this. I have a feeling that they were able to strong arm a couple of city councilmen to get them to vote against it. So we're going to see how that plays out later on today. Because like I said, I do believe that today is the day that they're going to reconvene on that referendum. And yeah, I have a strong feeling that those city councilmen, some of them are going to buckle and they're going to they will have been strong armed into voting against it. And henceforth, we need the NAACP, these Black pastors there to keep Black folks at bay, calm them down, and to pacify them. But we'll see how that works out. So with all that being said, that does it for today's show. There will be a stream tomorrow morning as well. So make sure you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, I want to thank you all for joining me today. There are 658 of you in the live stream right now. Please, on the way out, hit that like button, all 658 of you. Once again, when I say that, I don't say that just to be saying it. It is extremely important. And I also want to thank everyone who contributed to today's show. Thank you very much for the support that you've shown me. It is deeply appreciated. I am only here because you guys support me the way that you do. And you can do that via the super chat, super thanks, CashApp, $TDHipHop, Venmo, or become a channel member as well. All those links are in the description box below and will be pinned in the comment section after the stream is over. Thank you all for your time. And until the next live stream, peace. Have a great afternoon.